I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to usawatchdog.com. With us, one of our regular guests. And if you may remember a few weeks ago, almost a month ago, I had him on, and he said the stock market is going to hit new all-time high after new all-time high. Bing, 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 bing. Even with the 300-point drop-off, he was correct. I'm talking about Gregory Mannarino at traderschoice.net. Greg Mannarino, thanks for joining us today on USA Watchdog. It's
great to be here, Greg. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I want to get into last week. I could have led with the Ebola virus, the Israel-Gaza war, the Ukraine, and increasing sanctions, and we're headed towards war. The border. I could have led with all those stories. I could have also led with this story, the debt default of Argentina. And, I had you on, and we actually, I think we had a phone conversation. I don't know if this is on a video or not, but, we were talking about, you were saying, hey, there's not going to be a one-off. And you actually did a video about it. I think you were just talking on the phone. And it's not going to be a one-off. And I said, wow, Art Cashin said that there's never just one cockroach. And you went, oh, no. There's a lot more of these coming on. And that was after the Portugal bond, the Portugal bank default, the big Portugal bank that went heels up. Or defaulted on debt, I should say. And now we have Argentina, and these rating agencies are saying they're admitting at least another 11 on top of Argentina. What's your read on this? This is a huge financial story.
Absolutely, Greg. It's incredible. But, this is a common theme that you, I, and many people have been talking about. And I've been pushing this really hard for years now, talking about the insurmountable debt problem engulfing the world. It is, by any measure, if you have a perspective on this, to understand it's the greatest threat to humankind, period. And what really needs to be understood here is it's not just a financial issue, it's a resource issue. We've been allowed through this mechanism of a failing monetary system pull cash out of the future to acquire resources that we would not normally have. And we've created an alternative universe. But let's just talk about this real quick here. So yes, we have this issue in Portugal. And then about a week after that, we found out about a South African country, Angola, who was also having issues in their banking system. Argentina has been kind of mulling around for a while. Yes, they're in default now. And we do have at least 11 more that we know of, like you said. But as an analyst, and I look at this stuff all the time, what I look for is common themes. What is the common theme here between all of these nations, including the United States of America? Well, it's very simple. It's their debt to GDP ratio. It's that simple. Whenever you have a debt which exceeds your GDP, the country begins a terminal decline. That's it, period, the end. So, again, always look for common themes. This is the common theme now. And for how many years, for all of your subscribers and listeners out there, have we all been hearing that the global debt is insurmountable? It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. But what does that mean? It's not sustainable. That means, very basically, we cannot continue this mechanism of pulling cash out of the future to live this alternative universe. Period, the end. It's a very dangerous situation, but it's epic, Greg.
Could this Argentina thing, in years past, Argentina is, I've heard comments like, oh, they've made, debt default a national sport. But isn't it different now? Isn't it different with all these derivatives? And it's not only is it just that, but it's Ukraine and, countries like Greece are back in the news. And I actually, on one of the business channel, I heard somebody mention, if somebody like, say Italy defaulted, they didn't say they were going to, but I'm thinking to myself, with all these derivatives, you don't know who owns what. You don't know who is backed up by what credit default swap, how much leverage is behind this or that, or what Bank A is counting as equity in Bank B, and how much, the exponential amount with derivatives of debt they put on these. So if they default on a few $1 billion, it ain't a few $1 billion. It's amplified. It's exponential, is it not?
It's in the quadrillions, Greg. And the thing about this is it's all off the books. So no one knows. No one knows what this number actually is when we're talking about derivatives. The thing about derivatives is it creates a casino environment. In other words, you have a derivative is nothing more than a side bet on an underlying asset. And that can go on and on and on and be added to in all kinds of ways that are so bizarre. So we have here, again, and you're right here, we have, let's say, one particular asset and there's a derivative of that asset. Then there's a derivative of a derivative which continues on and on. You can have a derivative of anything. And again, yes, you're absolutely right. But again, let's look at this from.
Wait. I was going to finish Argentina. Could Argentina cause a daisy chain of defaults? Could this? Everybody's kind of playing this off, playing this like, well, J.P. Morgan's going to get involved, and this will be okay. But can't this cause a daisy chain of defaults, whether it's credit default swaps, interest rate derivatives, whatever kind of default chain in the world?
Yeah. Absolutely. We just saw this in 2008. But this time is much, much worse because nothing was fixed then. Absolutely. What's going to happen here, and I was out, when this whole thing came out here with Banco Santo in Portugal, I said, watch everyone, we're going to start seeing events here that are going to trigger credit default swaps. This very basically, for those people that don't get it, all a credit default swap is an insurance policy that's purchased by another entity to insure the debt of whatever institution or country in this case is backing up. So what happens in a case like this, and we just found out that this issue with Argentina is in fact going to trigger a credit default swap event. So what that means is whatever debt is owed by whatever entity is now the problem of another entity. And if that entity can't pay it back, it becomes the problem of another entity and another entity and another entity. So yes, absolutely. Again, boom, 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 boom. Cascade of events that will. And this is not a maybe, Greg. This is going to happen. We are going to watch this sweep the globe. We are going to see at one point an absolute failure and collapse of the financial system because it's nothing but being propped up. Not only is it being propped up, Greg, and this is something that you and I have talked about, we've interviewed about this as well. 2008, that was it. The music stopped. It's over. This is a terminal side effect, Greg, and they're doing everything they can, and they're not done yet. They're going to do more things to keep this whole system propped up, but that's all they can do. The system is dead.
Well, that's what happened with AIG. They basically wrote insurance policies and all these credit default swaps that had never defaulted in the past. And, in the 2008 meltdown, all of a sudden there was Goldman Sachs saying, yeah, you sold us insurance, AIG, and you need to pay us. They didn't have any money. They didn't have the money to back up the claims. So, boom, they went bankrupt. And we know the story there. The government stepped in and had to bail them out, to stop the epidemic of failure that was going to happen. If we would have let it go, there had been this daisy chain like you're talking. Are you saying that what about if a big bank like Italy? Italy's not in good financial ground. What happens if they go under? I mean, at some point, don't they run out of fingers to stick in the financial dike?
Absolutely. It's all over. This is over. Nothing can be fixed here, Greg, period. The system, again, died in 2008. They're trying to solve debt problems by adding more debt onto a debt issue. It's insanity because it's like pouring water on a drowning man and trying to save him. It just won't work. So again, what we're going to witness a cascade of events here because the financial system, for all intents and purposes, is done. And they're going to do things still. The central banks aren't done. And this is what I want people to understand as we move forward here. They're going to start doing things we haven't even thought of yet to keep this propped up because that's all they can do. There's no possible way out. No debt forgiveness program, no going back to any kind of a goals. It's done. It has to be completely reset. And the price that's going to have to be paid here is not just a financial one, Greg. Again, we've created a debt bubble that is engulfing the world. And what has paralleled that debt bubble is a human bubble, a boom in the global population. This is the correlation I want people to take away from this and to really push this home. When this debt bubble bursts, resources will not be available. We are going to see a correction, Greg, in human life. The human bubble is going to burst. And what do you think that is going to cause? It's going to cause massive, massive loss of life on a global scale.
You brought that up on, I think, one of our very first interviews, if not the very first one of the ones that you equated the huge growth. I think you had one of your famous charts out there, a huge growth in population with a huge growth in debt and all this printed money, and they kind of parallel, going straight up. And you're saying when it starts dropping, it's going to straight down. It's going to go down in parallel, just like it went up. It's going to go down.
Absolutely, and it's going to correct big time. It's unfortunate, and we're starting to see this now. We're starting to see the collapse that everyone, we've been talking about, you and I, a lot of people have been talking. We're seeing this right now. Look at the social unrest all over the globe. Wars breaking out all over the place. What's the root cause of it all? It's a scramble for finite resources, period. That's what we're seeing. Where there are power vacuums that are being filled right now. The issue here is so monumental. Let me put another perspective on this for people so they can understand. We are witnessing something that we've never seen in our lifetime. You, me, nobody. That is a shift of power and influence from the West to the East. As this progresses, does anybody believe this is going to be a smooth transition? Absolutely not, Greg. It's going to be horrible. Wars. There's going to be all kinds of issues that we haven't even thought of yet. Again, it's an epic moment in time, and people need to pay attention to this. And it all plays in to the same thing. This is all linked because the common element here is debt. The common element here is a scramble for resources. That's it.
You brought up in one of your videos about how that this recent 4% GDP, which is unadjusted, incidentally, and I can't imagine them adjusting it higher. Because the first quarter of 14, was 0.1%. It got adjusted all the way down to 2.9%. The math on that, if you take the unadjusted 4% and a negative 2.9%, you got 1.1% growth in the first 6 months. And we haven't adjusted this number. You called it war propaganda. Explain.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely here. The United States, and I actually did an Insta blog on Seeking Alpha about this as well. The United States is playing a very, very dangerous game of poker. It's a ploy that all poker players use. And that is this. They're feigning strength for weakness. All the economic news that we're going to be getting out from wherever it comes from is going to be fake. Because, again, it has to feign strength. A 4% GDP sounds really, really good here. So what kind of a message are we sending to our opponents around the world? Well, that the United States is doing really, really well. Meanwhile, it's obviously not true. How about this jobs number that just came out? I said specifically the day before it came out, I said the number's going to be fake. People, watch what's going to happen here. They're going to pull a Goldilocks number out of the sky to try to boost equities. And that's exactly what they tried to do. But it really didn't work. The market was all over the place, doesn't know what to make of this. I think that market participants just trying to say, hey, something's really wrong here. Nothing is making sense. And there's going to be, again, a massive price to pay for this.
Well, I mean, U6 is something like 12%, which is a closer number, but kind of fantasy. John Williams says the real underemployment rate, if you did it the way it was done in 1994 and earlier by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, you'd be having a 23, 24% print.
Absolutely.
And then they don't count all these people in the labor, all these people out of the labor force, which is at 90-something, 23 million. And then all these people on food stamps, record numbers, on disability, record numbers. And how is the economy doing so well?
I just tell people to look at two things. Two things and two things only. One is the labor force participation rate that's at a 36-year low. And the other big one, which is maybe bigger than that, is the money velocity. You cannot have an economic recovery if you do not have cash moving around in an economy. We're at historic lows here, Greg. So whatever they're trying to force feed people, believe me, it's a farce. All these numbers, all this nonsense, there's no economic recovery. It's just nonsense and garbage, and it's all a ploy to keep people believing, and it's nothing more than that things are okay. That's why they're hell-bent on continuing to boost equity prices. Why I said in our last interview we were going to see all-time high after all-time high in this market.
You said that. You said it. I got you. I got you on record saying it. That's why I led with that. Also, another stat I saw was that one big car company. I don't want to name it because I don't know if it's completely correct, but the high percentage of subprime car loans, like something like 80%. I mean, I think all of the dealers are getting waist deep, maybe neck deep into subprime. That's how they're selling their cars. And the government is supplying it going into the 2014 midterm elections. So, wow, everybody's fat and happy with, what are the payments, man?
Greg, what they're trying to do here is reinflate a credit bubble. That's what they're trying to do. They tried to reinflate a housing bubble. It's not working. So what they did to compensate for that is they reinflated an equity bubble, which is absolutely distorted. I don't know, 60% overvalued this market. Okay. Then they're trying to reinflate a credit bubble in any way possible by offering all of these subprime loans, no money down, blah, 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 whatever it might be. It's not going to work. And again, let's look at one more common theme between every single bubble we have. That is, they rise above a level that can be sustained by any means. So they can try to reinflate bubbles. They can continue to hyper distort this debt bubble. It's not going to work. At one point, it's going to burst. And that's what people need to realize. There's no possible way out. It's all going down. Everything.
And this is why you take your people are like, well, he's on Trader's Choice. He's telling people to buy stocks. You just have this very simple technique where you make money in the market, and then you go down to your local coin store, I guess, and then you take and you put that money into silver or gold or coins. I mean, you just put it into silver and gold, right? I mean, that's what you're doing with with a lot of your winnings, are you not? Is that the only place to hide, or farmland, or pay off your car, or your house, or whatever? Is that what you're talking about, buying things, tangible assets, for bracing yourself for the reset?
Oh, absolutely. And you got to look, the reason why I'm heavily invested in the precious metals here is because I believe they are suppressed. Something else we talked about, not only are they suppressed, but I think it's the greatest opportunity in the history of the world right now to be owning assets like this as the financial system continue the terminal decline. Again, go back to what we spoke about earlier in this when we talk about nations here that are defaulting on their debt. Their common theme is their debt to GDP ratio, and we're right there in the United States as well. And we're in a terminal decline, right? It can't stop. So what we need to do is, and it's just so simple, is we need to understand, and this is another common theme of mine since I started, is bet against the debt. Take the short end of that trade. How do you take the short end of that trade? Your own precious metals, because they're real assets, they're real wealth, it's real money.
The bond default by Argentina, this can't be the last one, or is it? Is this the last default that we're going to see? Or do you think in the coming weeks ahead we're going to see this increasing chain of defaults grow?
Exactly. Let's talk about that for a moment here. You got JP Morgan stepping in here. Why are they stepping in? Because they're just so nice and they want to go in there and they want to help everyone? Absolutely not. Obviously, they have skin in the game. And you think it's just JP Morgan? No possible way. It's all of these big banks. I can tell you right now, they're all shaking their boots. There's no doubt about it. Could you imagine what AIG might be holding on their books right now? We're not even hearing anything about that.
But that's all fixed, though, Gregory Mannarino. That's all fixed, isn't it?
Yeah, no. Not only is it not fixed, that whole issue has gotten so much worse that it's hard to actually get your head around it. If you sit and think about it, it'll probably make you want to puke. It makes me want to puke. Again, it just goes back to the issue that this cannot be fixed. There's no possible way out of this. None.
And you think we'll have more defaults? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, absolutely.
But you think we're going to have more defaults, whether it's Ukraine or Greece or all these other 10 or 11 countries that they know of, that they say we have a problem. And you're saying that you're going to see other roaches come out that you didn't know were there. There's not just 11 roaches, is what I'm saying. Is that right? You think we're going to have some kind of, increasing daisy chain of more and more defaults?
Oh, absolutely. And let's talk about this. The European debt crisis never went away. They tried to solve the European debt crisis. How? By adding more debt to it. Does that sound like any kind of a fix to you or anyone out there that's listening? Absolutely not. It just made the problem much, much worse. So you can expect this at one point, Greg. It's going to sweep the globe here. The debt bubble is going to burst. Watch the bond market. Forget about the equity market, everyone, because that's where they want you to look. You need to be watching the debt market. You need to be watching the bond market. When we start seeing yields rise, no matter what they try to do, because we're going to see this at one particular point. They cannot continue to buy all this debt to suppress rates. People will dump this thing, and that cash is just going to look for other places to go. As the yields rise, we'll get massive amounts of pressure on equities, and both in tandem will sell off rapidly. All of that cash is simply going to look for a place to go, Greg. And in my opinion, since I've been sitting here for years now, I've been saying it's going to go into commodities. Period. I mean, it's just a simple scenario. Just put that together.
When do you think this happens? Give me a time frame. Can you?
Well, I can say this. There's no doubt about this at this point. There are cracks in this debt bubble. We saw it start just a little while ago here with Portugal. It moved on to the South African nation of Angola. We have Argentina right now. This is, in my opinion, going to start a cascade of events. Watch the bond yields. That's all I have to say.
Gregory Mannarino, TradersChoice.net. Gregory Mannarino, thanks for joining us today on USA Watchdog and giving us your analysis. Watch the debt market. I love that. You can't pour water on a drowning man and expect to save him. I like that.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on.
Great. Thank you.